Emperor Palpatine was one of the most cunning and intelligent tacticians in Star Wars, both politically as well as his gifts in the dark side. Setting plans in motion that often took years to carry out, he was able to manipulate the entirety of the galaxy into going to war, and formulated a method for dismantling and eradicating one of the most powerful galactic organizations in history, even establishing his own form of government in the process, one that of course he ruled. Despite this, however, he has been forced to adapt and evolve his ideas to account for unforeseen circumstances, and his plans often stray from their original design. But one question in particular seems to reframe his own views on Darth Vader significantly. This question arises due to an apparent discrepancy between what Sidious says and what he does, between the fall of the Republic and the culmination of the Imperial regime. Initially, as the Jedi Order is crumbling, Sidious is thrilled to have an apprentice who is destined to outgrow both him and Master Yoda in terms of raw power. After the rise of the Empire, however, Palpatine sets in place several safeguards to protect himself from being overthrown by Vader. He keeps Vader's suit intentionally weakened, keeping Vader confined with outdated and oftentimes painful materials which inhibit his mobility and power. He also uses several safety measures around himself, and is actively searching for ways to prolong his life via the use of Strandcast clones, indicating that this is no longer the plan, and that Vader is no longer meant to inherit the Empire. Despite his enthusiasm in Revenge of the Sith, he seems to own Vader as a prisoner, no longer regarding him as having the potential to surpass him and govern the Empire as a new Sith. So why is this? What actually held Vader back from reaching his full potential? Why did the Emperor's view on Vader change so drastically? And how did Vader change Palpatine's vision of the Empire? Well, today, students of the Force, let's answer that question and express exactly what held Darth Vader back. First though, make no mistake, Darth Vader is one of the most fearsome Sith Lords in the galaxy, and is single-handedly responsible for the eradication of dozens of Jedi. His transition into a mechanical, near-death husk after being defeated by Obi-Wan was never a part of Palpatine's original plan though, and although Vader became powerful, he was nowhere near what he was ultimately meant to be. We know that the original goal of Sidious was to groom and turn the single most powerful Jedi Knight of his generation, and any generation for that matter, who many believe to be the chosen one of ancient prophecy, to corrode him and turn him utterly against the order that deemed him the prophesied chosen one. If he could succeed, then he believed he would be the master of the single most powerful Sith Lord in galactic history, cementing the galaxy under the rule of two and the rule of the dark side. Thanks to the Secrets of the Sith novel, which tells the story of the Empire from Palpatine's point of view, we know that he also tried to create a dyad in the Force with Lord Vader, believing him to be one of the only beings powerful enough to do so. He understood that the Skywalker and the Palpatine bloodlines were among the most powerful in galactic history, and the only reason Sidious failed this dyad was because they each served the dark side of the Force. Despite the promise and excitement of Lord Vader, however, Anakin's defeat on Mustafar at the hands of his former master led him to serving as much of a more lapdog to the Emperor, rather than the prodigy who would eventually surpass him in terms of power and potential. But make no mistake, the things that truly held Vader back were not his physical ailments, but his psychological ones. Darth Vader was crippled by severe psychological inhibitions as a result of various traumas that he had endured at the hands of the Jedi and throughout the Clone Wars. He butchered his teammates, lost his wife and unborn child, and had largely resigned his reason to live, utterly breaking the psyche of Anakin. There is even a precedent set in Legends continuity that suggests that one's psychological state can drastically hinder their Force potential and connection with their inherent power. And although this story is not canon, this seems to be very similar to what is happening with Darth Vader. In Legends, the character of Valen is the daughter of former Sith Emperor Valkorion, and she too has immense, untapped Force potential as a result of her powerful bloodline. Her own father even came to fear her latent Force potential, believing her to be far stronger naturally than himself. And although she likely would never rise to the same level that Anakin might have, the Emperor took steps towards crippling his potential in order to protect himself. But this is where Valen's story ultimately connects with that of Darth Vader. Valkorion was aware of Valen's intense power and feared her immensely. Therefore, he imprisoned her on Nathema in a facility that psychologically conditioned her to never achieve her full potential, as she was beaten, tortured, and had her sanity broken to the point where she was never able to fully embrace the limits of what her power offered her. This seems to be what is happening with Darth Vader in a sense, and Vader is nowhere near what Palpatine had once envisioned for the potential of the Chosen One. Only instead of Palpatine crippling Vader's potential, it's Vader's own mental stability. This is a major theory among the Star Wars fanbase, that the reason that Darth Vader is so much weaker than Emperor Palpatine is because of his own broken mental psyche, not because his latent inherent force potential was weakened to the point where he could never surpass Palpatine. From here, the Emperor would confine Vader in a clunky, uncomfortable, and outdated suit, which he himself had built numerous weaknesses into, and he began to alter his plans to account for a new apprentice other than Vader. He ensured that the suit was weak to force lightning, and that Sidious would always be able to kill his apprentice if that time ever came. Because of this inherent power being crippled, he viewed Vader as largely disposable, and he was no longer this prime apprentice that he had always desired. This has always been an aspect of Star Wars lore that has fascinated me. The idea that it's not the injuries that Anakin sustained on Mustafar that keeps him so weak, but rather it's the idea that it's his own mental state and his inability to fully commit to the dark side for the reasons that the dark side itself will embrace. Pain and anger can only bring you so far, but in order to become the one soul and true Dark Lord of the Sith, you have to commit yourself to the dark side of the Force fully, not because it is the only option, as the dark side was the only option left to Anakin Skywalker, but because it is your very will to become the most powerful being in the entire galaxy. In a sense, in many ways, this was never Darth Vader's true goal, as Vader's goal was never really to overpower the Emperor or the Empire as a whole. The goal of Lord Vader was to prove himself superior to any Jedi, and yet he too believed that he would never match up to the power of Darth Sidious. Make no mistake, Vader was aware of his weaknesses, but it was his broken psyche and this thing that Darth Vitiate or Valkorion experienced within his own daughter, and used to his advantage because of his latent fear for her that happened naturally with Lord Vader. Darth Sidious sensed that Darth Vader would never become what he was truly capable of, but perhaps this had nothing to do with the injuries that he sustained on Mustafar. Perhaps it had far more to do with the fact that Darth Vader's psyche was completely broken, and even in his very soul, Darth Sidious sensed that Vader's allegiance to the dark side was not a permanent one, and that perhaps Darth Vader viewed the dark side and the Empire as a means to an end, a means to construct his only purpose in the galaxy, and that perhaps obtaining ultimate power was never a part of Vader's plan, especially after being crippled on Mustafar. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this, and this being the reason why Darth Vader could never actually surpass Darth Sidious? Again, this is very much a fan theory, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this. As always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.
Just let me fall to my